everyone, and welcome back to Sip and Spin. My name is Skylar, and over here in a Smokey the Bear shirt is Brittany. Only you can stop forest fires, or wildfires, or whatever it is.
I think it's wildfires.
Wildfires, yeah.
That's right. And this is a variety podcast where we talk about anything, everything, and nothing, and we prevent wildfires now. So
Yes, that is what we do. All of the wildfires that are in Kentucky. You know, there hasn't been a wildfire in Kentucky.
because of us.
Because of us.
So, are we sure there's never been a wildfire in Kentucky?
I'm sure there has been a wildfire. I'm pretty sure my dad actually started a wildfire in Kentucky, but
Only he can prevent wildfires, Skylar.
But he kept it contained to like a few trees.
Oh. Well, then you got to plant more trees.
Because, so for those of y'all who don't know, I live on essentially a farm. Not an animal farm, but like a plant farm or a crop farm. So we have 2 cornfields, and we also have an entire section of woods behind our house, just like at least probably 6 or 7 acres. That's just woods. And then if you go like all the way back to our barn, there's all of the woods like lining the path back to the barn, and then it goes around the barn and comes around, and then like there's like trees in between the barn and the cornfield. Well, we also have a burn pit back there because, you know, we live in the country, and so sometimes it's just a good way to get rid of like bigger trash is to just burn it, which you can do in the country.
Oh, yeah, no. We do that too.
But it had gotten out of control, and it went out of the burn pit, because it's like, the burn pit is like at least a 10-foot hole dug in the ground. But it had gotten out and like set 4 of the trees behind the burn pit like on fire, and like we were trying to get like buckets of water and like a hose, and it was just, yeah, so that was super duper fun.
Yeah, try not to do that, folks.
But the rest of the woods are still, it was like 4 trees, so everything else is still intact.
I mean, it could have been worse.
It could have been a lot worse.
So.
We were really lucky, and I was like 12, and I was like, what do I do?
Stay out of the fire, probably. But how are you?
I'm good. I had a pretty good night last night. You know, work went well. No one threw up in my car this week, so that was also super
always
fun.
a plus.
I bartended 3 days this week, and I just got done house sitting yesterday. I made up a new drink while I was bartending. I came up with 2 different versions of it. I'm not sure which one I like better, but they were both pretty good.
Nice.
One of them is Buffalo Trace peach schnapps and lemonade. The other one is Crown peach schnapps and lemonade. Because I love peaches, but I don't like sweet drinks when it comes to alcohol.
Yeah.
Because the sugar like makes my stomach hurt. So when you use the lemonade, you cut back on that sweetness of the peaches with the lemonade, and so it kind of balances it out perfectly. And I was like, I'm so proud of myself. This is so good.
I'm so talented. Nice.
Yeah, I met some interesting people. I met these 2 guys who were musicians, and they were going on like a music tour, but they weren't performing. They were just like traveling down like, you know, the blues states and like blues areas to go see live shows. But they did have a recording session in Memphis, and they're brothers, and one is from Denmark and the other is from London. And they have some songs out on Spotify, and so when I found when they told me about their Spotify page, I listened to them on the way home, and they're really good. I was like, good music.
The brothers from different countries?
Yes, I didn't ask about that.
Okay.
But that is
I feel
what
like I
they
would have
said.
asked.
I meant to, but at first I was like, did I hear that right? And I was like, maybe they're, cause I wasn't sure. But
Maybe
I
they're
just,
brothers? Like,
yeah.
think of each other as brothers?
Maybe. I'm not.
Oh. No.
Hopefully we're still good. If there's like an awkward space in between anything, just know it's because Brittany's computer was like, would you like this app to make changes to your device in the middle of recording?
Took
So
over the whole screen. So, here's hoping.
we're just gonna, fingers crossed. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Nothing too crazy this week, I guess.
Nice.
How about you? How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm boring, so. I'm losing complete hearing in my left ear, which is always fun.
Oh,
So I
good.
have to keep, like, pulling it down. This is the only way I can hear.
Huh.
So that's been really fun. I refuse to go to a doctor.
Because it sounds like you probably have like something blocking your ear.
Probably. I just keep pouring peroxide down it, hoping that works.
Okay.
It hasn't. So, no, I used to have this problem as a kid a lot, and that's what I would usually do, but I think I let this one go too long. But, I don't know, I'm used to not being able to hear anyway. It's just worse now.
Yeah.
So, yay. And other than that, I've just been, I wasn't sick this week, but I felt very blah. Like, it felt like I was getting sick, but I wasn't. It was just the tired that comes when you're sick, or like allergy. Like, I just felt so tired. And or I just wasn't getting rest. I don't know. I just felt kind of weird this week. But Richard did make me a blanket fort one night, and homemade pizza, deep dish pizza that was really good, and got me a Steam Deck, and we played Stardew Valley. And
fun.
And that was really cute and nice.
Oh yeah, I remember you posting that on Snapchat. And the caption was like, what if we played Stardew Valley, and I was like, I would be so down. I will play Stardew Valley in a blanket fort all day long.
It was cute. It was fun. Cause we put like string lights in it that we took to Bonnaroo and all that. And we also like slept in it that night because it was pretty comfy. But Mochi kept trying to jump on top of the blanket fort, and so we would just like, the way we were holding it down with like our blankets. So we keep blankets under a bench, under a window, in like little boxes, and so we put those on to like hold the blanket like taut. And so when she would try to walk on said blanket partition covering, she would then fall, and then the box of blankets would fall, which I have a lot of blankets, so those were actually deceptively really heavy. So then they would like fall right on our chest or our face, and yeah, so other than that, Cat being a turd, and then Lana not understanding what a blanket fort was, and like being restless and going a little nuts. Otherwise it was nice. It worked out. But yeah, no, that's about it. And then next week, so we're doing this thing where we have, because we're really pretty bad, like, because we spend all of our time together, so we don't necessarily go on dates, or have like date nights, because like every night is just kind of a night with us. Like it could all be considered like someone's type of date, because it's a lot of times it's just like dinner or hanging out. So like we're actively trying to like set aside 2 nights a week for date nights, and so one is something at the house, and then one is like something outside of the house, and we each take turns planning alternating months. So he had the at home with the pillow fort and all of that, and the food and stuff, and now I have the away from home, and so my date will be coming up this week. I'll figure out what I'm doing, and I'll tell you next week what we did. So I think it's Wednesday.
Okay.
But yeah, so we're gonna try and just do a little date nights.
Aw, that's so cute.
So we'll see how long we keep it up. We're very forgetful people.
Do you want to have a podcast night Friday?
A podcast night Friday?
Yeah, well, we don't have date nights because we're not dating, but we have podcast co-host night.
Sure.
I want to go to the brewery and try that pineapple cider, but I don't want to go by myself.
Oh yeah, that's fine. I'll go with you. It might not be pineapple anymore.
Oh.
They changed a lot.
Oh, okay.
Because they just, when they run out, they switch. So I was trying to remember what it was Thursday. It was the elderberry, which is one I really like.
Oh, that sounds so good.
That one is delicious. I had it. I was like, what is it? I was like, oh, I literally had it. Yeah, it was the elderberry, which is also really good. It's one of my favorite ones. But yeah, I'm always down to go.
Because I want to go to work Friday nights. I'm like, I kind of want to do stuff, but I don't want to go to the brigade because they have like the comedy nights, and those sound lame. So
that sounds like that would make me cringe so hard.
Yes.
I can't do stand-up comedy. It's just cringes. I don't like it.
And like sometimes I'll see like stuff on, you know, TikTok of like stand-up comedians, and I'm like, this is funny. Like I enjoy this.
It's already been recorded.
Yes.
But live, I can't do it. Yeah.
So it's like I get to see like the good parts.
Yeah.
And they're also not from where we are, where
Kentucky, just
people's sense of humor is probably not quite match up with what my sense of humor is.
That's a good point too. Yeah.
So I'm like, but I still want to kind of do something, and I'm like this time of year, the brewery is like the perfect place to go because they've got like the outside seating.
Yeah. Let's do it. Well, I guess, are we ready?
Yeah, I thought I heard something.
I was like, why are you looking behind you?
I thought I heard something, so I was like, what is that?
Good.
It was like a clicking sound.
Is it the fan?
It could be the fan.
Okay, I was like, I don't know what else it could be, unless you're hearing like Richard's controller in the next room, which that could be clicking.
It could be the fan.
Okay.
But I'm just like, yeah, because that is that sound.
Okay, yeah. I'm just used to it. Yeah. It's the fan. Mystery solved.
Which you think I would be used to it because I'm here all the time, but I guess just for some reason it just now registered. I'm like, what is that?
That's fair. Well, what are we doing today?
So today we are doing random.
Yes. Which, it's just as it sounds, it can be anything.
Yes. And you never know what it's going to be until it's time to actually do it, and then sometimes you still don't know what it's going to be and then have to change last minute, which is what I did. Because I still did not get done.
It happens. And what are we drinking?
We are drinking a drink we do not like.
Yeah, again.
So fun.
Yay.
So I'm drinking a Dr. Pepper.
She just lied.
What? I am not drinking a Dr. Pepper. I mean, I don't like Dr. Pepper.
I was going to say, do you wish you were?
No, I don't like Dr. Pepper. I like Diet Dr. Pepper, but I do not like Dr. Pepper. But I'm not drinking Dr. Pepper. I'm drinking root beer because I don't like root beer.
Yes. I also don't like root beer, so I asked Skylar to also get me one, and I put whiskey in mine. I like whiskey, but the root beer is going to take over, and I'm not excited. But at least there's alcohol.
I am not drinking any alcohol tonight, just because I'm hurting right now, so I'm just going to stick with water and this nasty soda. So that's so exciting.
Yeah, I look like the thirstiest person in the world, because I have my drink, I have water, and I have the rest of my Diet Coke from lunch. I just have all of the drinks.
Cheers, I guess.
Oh,
it's so bad.
Who likes root beer? Psychos.
And it leaves like a weird taste on your, like, the sides of your tongue, and I'm just like,
Well, nothing about it is enjoyable.
no.
Richard loves root beer. Like a freak.
Can't relate.
No. Even the smell is not appealing.
It reminds me of medicine.
Yeah, it's very medicinal.
Yeah.
Which I think the root that it's made from is medicinal, so, like, that makes sense. But
Oh.
I can't remember what it is, but, yeah. Not pleasant. To me. Anything else? Before we jump in?
I don't think so.
Alright.
But you know me, I'll probably come up with something like midway through and then interrupt and get us off on a whole new thing. But that's okay, we're allowed to do what we want, so.
It's nothing new here. And also, my segment is kind of short, just because my topic is kind of, like, not a lot out there for it, but I still thought it was interesting to talk about. I don't trust you when you stare and make eye contact with me.
And her eyes get real, like she widens her eyes and just stares.
I know. She's a starey cat. She's kind of creepy sometimes.
When I was house sitting for you, I was like sitting on the couch, I was leaned back, and she got up and put her paws right here, and her face is right here, and she was just staring at me, and I was like,
She does that to me all
what
the
do you
time.
want? And I was like, what?
If I'm on the couch, she has to be right here, and then she just stares at me, and I don't know what that
don't
means.
eat that. Quit it.
Okay. You had your window time. You're done. Goodbye. Okay. Anyway.
Sorry, I see it didn't take long.
Between you and Mochi. So I am going to talk about a little bit of folklore. again, which is also kind of what I did before with 3 Amazons. I did mermaids. If you're interested, to go back and listen to that. But today is something different. So I'm going to be talking about a Norwegian folktale, Pesta.
Yes.
So,
check out our Bramble playthrough on YouTube.
yeah, I was going to shout it out again.
Oh, well, you can shout it out again. We'll shout it out twice, it's fine.
Yeah, we're allowed. Also sometimes referred to as the Plague Maiden, the Plague Hag, or the Maid of Pestilence. Makes sense because pesta in Norwegian translates to plague. So it's very to the point. Because whatever you want to call her, all she is the personification of the Black Plague. Which, terrifying in and of itself. Because that no one likes the Black Plague.
No, it killed millions of people.
Yes. So the Black Plague, or the Black Death, like again, something else with a lot of names. Bubonic Plague was a deadly disease that ravaged lands from the 1300s to the 1900s. In Norway, the pandemic came in the year 1349, and it came on like a fucking storm. In a matter of months, as much as 60% of the Norwegian population died.
Damn.
So it hit them hard. So of course they were like, they had to like give a villain to this.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is how Pesta came to be, because something horrible like that, your brain does anything it can to like rationalize catastrophe.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Because it also just in general, the personification of death and disease was pretty common during the late medieval period everywhere, not even just in Norway.
And that's what's so cool about like folklore and mythology. It's literally just people coming up with a reason why things are the way that they are.
Yeah, I mean, it's just any way, it's like a universal way for your brain or for just as coping to just deal with and try to rational it out type of thing. Which is interesting that like just humans share that like need to justify, or not even justify, like explain an experience. Folklorists argue that folklore can be true and can be the results of individuals, quote, rationally perceiving a real situation, end quote. So, kind of like what we were saying. But essentially, the old legends of Pesta say that the plague came in the shape of an old woman named Pesta. She was said to have an ashen face and brought terror to all who saw her. And then there's varying claims that she was either dressed in all black, or sometimes she wore a red skirt, and then there's one account of her wearing a blue skirt. And she was seen with either her rake in her hand or her broom in her hand. So if Pesta had her rake when she came through your town, some of your people would survive, because it was kind of signified like you will escape through the teeth of the rake type of thing.
Yes, I am recalling.
But if she was seen sweeping with her broom, you were already doomed. There was no hope for anyone, because no soul would survive this encounter with her, because it was like everyone would be swept away. So those are the two options you get with Pesta. Pesta wiped out whole communities. Descriptions of Pesta traveling through the countryside trace the path of the actual Black Plague that the disease took. She traveled from farm to farm, walked through the countryside, over mountains, and she was said to even travel by boat.
I like how accurate they were in Bramble.
Yeah, I talk about Bramble at the very end, but it was really well done. Oh, that drink is horrible. Sorry, I have to recover from my drink.
That's the unfortunate thing about drinks we don't like, is that after every sip we have to like die and come back before we can continue.
Yeah. So if you had an encounter with Pesta, the tales say that it took no longer than 3 days to die. The disease worked with such speed that people often were unable to feed their livestock from the stables and free their livestock from the stables and the sheds. So without food and care, of course, these animals would unfortunately also die due to thirst or hunger. When Pesta traveled by boat, all of the boatmen fell ill and died. And this kind of comes with how the Black Plague even came to Norway to begin with. So it was said that the plague came to Norway via a ghost ship that was filled with infected rats, because everyone that docked, or that when that ship docked in Norway, everyone was dead on it. Like there was not a soul that survived, and that's how this plague got there and wiped out
Wow.
60% of their country. And so that's when they were like, well, that was Pesta arriving to our country. So in the stories, the boatmen are portrayed as both victims of Pesta and carriers of the disease. Carriers in the sense that they carried Pesta to their country and then also literally carrying the disease. So I always thought that was interesting. But also terrible that that's how it affected them. So like 60% is a lot. And then of course after them, then it went on to Russia. And it's just like, if it just didn't, like, it could have saved so much.
Yeah.
It's horrible. So, one tale about the blue skirt in particular is the story of Pesta and the ferryman. A different boat tale. So, one day, Pesta came to a lake and called out for the ferryman to take her across. She wore a blue skirt, and at first the man did not recognize her. And this is really the only tale that talks about how she maybe also used disguise as a way to sneak up on people, because again, she was mostly being all black or red skirt. So the blue skirt, the ferryman was like, oh, it's just an old lady who needs a cross. Gradually, though, it dawned on him as to who was with him on his boat. He pleaded with her to spare his life. If she did, he would let her good deed be the payment for the boat journey. Pesta conferred with a large book that she had in her lap, and then answered quietly, sadly, I cannot spare your life, but I can make your death an easy one. So when the man returned home, he was exhausted and fell into a deep sleep. He never woke up. So she did let him go peacefully. But I found this one interesting because it takes the tone that she has she has a death note.
Yeah.
Like she has a book of everyone who has to die. Which I thought was interesting. I didn't see that in any other tales. Just this one particular one with the ferryman.
Interesting.
So yeah, I would love to know more about that, but I went to like page 4 of Google trying to find shit, so like there's not a lot. But I thought that was really interesting. And then another tale kind of about Pesta. So in western Norway, in the depths of the region, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce any of these, in the depths of the region of Songa, high up in the mountains, there is the valley of Jostedal. So as the plague kept coming closer and closer to the region, many of the rich and powerful fled to this remote valley, hoping to escape Pesta. So when they arrived and were settled in and feeling safe, they allowed no one else to cross the valley's perimeter. So they fled to this valley and then said no one else is coming in. Which I get it, but also I don't know, the fact that it's just all the rich and the powerful are doing this, it's like, so did you just abandon other people? Probably.
That's usually how that goes.
They would only communicate with the outside world by letters. They did this by leaving and also receiving letters under a big rock at the entrance of the valley. This rock, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but it translates to literally the letter stone in English. And the cool thing is, though, this rock is apparently still there today. So you can still go see the letter stone. But that's the only communication they had with the outside world. Try as they might, though, Pesta still found her way into Jostedal. Everyone except for one young girl all died. So I guess she had her rake that day. Sometime later,
I was wondering about that because if they were convinced that they were going to survive, but yet they were exchanging letters with the people on the outside, it's things that you touch with your hands can still, or that you breathe near, can still carry.
Yeah, but you have to, how much did people understand about plague back then? Because, hell, you saw how people reacted with corona. Humans aren't very smart when times of panic. So, yeah, I'm sure they really just doomed themselves. But still, one little girl survived. Sometime later, after Pesta came to Jostedal, abandoned domestic animals from the area appeared in a neighboring valley. Not having any idea as to what was going on, the people there decided to investigate. So they arrived, moved from house to house, but they found no one alive. As they were getting ready to head back, they spotted the young girl. They called out to her, but by this time, she was said to be basically just like a wild animal. So she ran off into the forest and disappeared. After discussing it, the people agreed that it was their duty to try to save her, to go after her. The girl's naturally scared and confused. Her whole town died around her. She probably had no idea what was happening. I don't have an actual age, just that she was young, so use your she's still a kid. And although it took them a really long time to find her, the people did manage to track her down. The girl reminded them of a mountain bird, the grouse, so they gave her the name the Grouse of Ylstedal. So they gave her a little cheeky name, and then they brought her back to their valley, and they treated her well, and she grew up fine.
Okay.
So for many years, though, the valley of Ylstedal was completely abandoned, but as time went on, people rediscovered the valley. The farmhouses and the fields were mended and cleared. And then when the Grouse of Ylstedal was older, she found love in her childhood valley and married there.
Aww.
So as the tale goes, she stayed in Ylstedal for the rest of her life afterwards and left a large and respected family line behind.
Aww.
So good for her. It all worked out for the Grouse, the grouse.
That's
Which
cute.
I was like, well, that was a cute one. I mean, it's everyone still died because of Pesta, but
at least
she
someone
went
got
on
a
to have a
happy
good
ending.
life. Yeah. And then the other little tale that I have that kind of references Pesta. This one's a little more like a stretch, but this one comes more than 100 years after the Black Plague. So in a different part of Norway, it didn't say where, there was a bear hunter who was completely lost one day when he was out hunting in a vast forest. He was desperately looking for any sign of life, and when the day was almost over, he had given up hope of finding warm shelter for the night. Then, suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, he saw several buildings almost hidden by the forest. They were surrounded by trees, so he almost missed it. It was like a haunted place, and the hunter was reluctant to get closer. Fair, I feel like. He entered the main cottage first. By the fireplace, he found a rusty pot. On the benches nearby, he found rotting yarn, and on the wall, he found a bow and some arrows. Thick dust covered like everything in the house. So he kept looking, and in the bed in the corner, he found old human bones. Slowly, he began to put the story together, and he got into his mind that Pesta had paid a visit with her broom, and the world had stopped. So everyone in this village was dead, and he was just finding everything was they had left it, type of thing. So that's why he assumed no one survived. Because he slowly walked through all the other buildings on the old farm. It was just how people had left it again 100 years ago. Because it's many years after. The man decided that he would claim what he had found and start a new life in this mysterious and seemingly forgotten forest. He buried the bones, and soon after, the old place came alive again. That's the end of that story.
Sure.
But I just like that he was like, oh, dead bodies everywhere? I'm claiming this town as mine.
We'll bury the bones.
At least he buried the bones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not using it, so.
It's true. I mean, hey, you find a mysterious town in the forest, you take that shit.
Finders keepers.
Maybe cleanse it a little bit. And then if you Google or look up anything pertaining to Pesta, almost all the images you will see depicting her are drawings by Theodor Kittelsen. He was a Norwegian artist who was born at the end of the 19th century. Kittelsen is most famous for drawing trolls, which are another very popular Norwegian folklore stuff around trolls. But he also completed a work called Svartalvalgen, which basically just is Black Death, that is filled with poems and images of the folklore that surrounded the 14th century plague, and of course that Pesta is featured quite heavily in this work of his. It's very hard. The whole book is in Norwegian, obviously. I found one poem that was translated, and it briefly has a nod to Pesta. So, and I've never been one to got poems. I'm not very into poetry, but here's a poem. It's called The Pauper. And again, I don't know how well the translation is, so take it with maybe a grain of salt. He knows every step, every root and tree, the same tracks, the same feelings. That road he had treaded for many a year. His thoughts have become a monotonous song. I know every log, I know every leaf, every sound, every step, every sunbeam and shadow. The road is long, long. A woodpecker drums on a rotten log. A crow is calling, a squirrel rustles past. Otherwise, all is so perfectly quiet, so still that the brook's murmur scares him. Is someone coming? Yes, that's what he thought. Up there, round the bend, comes an ugly, crooked old woman, with a rake and a broom. She rocks her head, comes straight towards him, looks him in the eye with a piercing, cross-eyed, evil stare, gives him her withered, palsied hand, only skin and bones, sallow and mottled with bluish-black patches. And it ends there. So,
Right.
it seems Pesta found the pauper and offered him her hand. Because in all, like, every tale or whatever, and there are some mentions, Pesta is not a malicious entity or like a malicious being. She just moves on, like, she just is, she is what she is, and, like, especially in the tale with the ferryman, you know, she would have saved his life if she could have, but she couldn't. It wasn't her power, but she's like, I'll make it quick. Because, you know, also, sometimes it would suck to die slowly. 3 days doesn't seem like a lot, but it feels like that would be a horrible over 3 days to just die of the plague.
Yeah. I think 3 days would be horrible to die of anything.
Yeah, that's true. Pesta is depicted some in media, so most notably for us, and kind of what led to me picking this topic, as Skylar kind of already said, is we played the game Bramble the Mountain King over on our YouTube, which is a game about different Nordic folk tales, and Pesta has a small little segment in the game, which her segment is actually one of the creepier ones, I find. Her fight was trippy as hell.
Yes.
But the way they did her, like, the way they did all of them is really fun and interesting if you like folklore and are okay with, like, because it is technically a horror game. So it gets dark, so we won't say it doesn't, because it does.
I cried. If that tells you anything, this game made me cry.
Yes. But they do, like, just different little bite-sized pieces, and Pesta has her own little segment, and, you know, she has her rake, she has, like, a boat scene, she's dressed in her black, and there's a town that was hit with a plague. So it was very cool.
Now, in the game, she is malicious.
Yeah, you fight her. You literally battle it out with her. So.
Yeah, she's definitely malicious in the game, so don't be fooled.
Yeah. Not a sweet little old lady. But also, the Plague Maiden enemies in the Witcher 3 game are also said to be based on Pesta. So in this game, which I've started Witcher 3, I've never actually finished it, I need to try again. But in the game, they take the appearance of a woman coated with scabs and rotting flesh, and are commonly accompanied by rats, and they delight in causing suffering and pain to the nearby mortals. So if you look into, like, lore on the game, they also mention that they were based loosely on Pesta and just being personification of the Black Death once again. So I thought that was cool. And then, fortunately, of course, thanks to modern medicine, the bubonic plague is no longer the threat that it once was, so I don't believe you'll have to worry about meeting Pesta in Norway anytime soon. But, as history is known to repeat itself, and humans never learn, as we learned with Corona, I wouldn't write her off completely. She could be chilling, just with her rake and her broom, ready to meet you. That's really all I have on Pesta. Like I said, it's really short.
Didn't there was like an article or like it's a medical something that, like, the Black Plague isn't gone.
Yeah, I think I do know what you're talking about.
Like, you can still,
because didn't someone get it recently?
Yeah, like, it's not gone, but now we have the medical.
Treat it. Yeah,
we have the medical resources to be able to treat it. It's not gonna run rampant and, like, kill everyone.
It's not gonna take out maybe 60% of a pop. Hopefully.
Hopefully
nothing is.
Yeah, now we have, but it's still out there.
No, yeah, I feel like maybe it was last year or the year before. I feel like there was a report that someone had the Black Plague.
Yeah,
but that we have medicine now. So.
Yes. So it was okay.
Yeah. But I mean, maybe they ran into Pesta in the back alley. Like, who knows, you know?
A parking lot of a Denny's.
Yeah.
I feel like if the Black Plague is anywhere, it's in the parking lot of a Denny's.
Well, I do still feel like this was overseas somewhere that I heard the tale, and I don't know if they have Denny's overseas.
They probably have something like Denny's.
Do we have international listeners? Do you have Denny's? Do you know what a Grand Slam is?
Or if you know what a Denny's is, do you have something that's like a Denny's?
Well, it's like a diner, so I'm sure they have diners.
But I'm convinced that's where she's hanging out.
Hey, you know what? I kind of like Denny's. I need you to back up. When I used to go to concerts that had a Denny's at like 2 a.m., get some pancakes, like, and some coffee, just There was always just an old waitress who hated her life working there. So slow. But she was the only one working, so she would talk to you, and she said some wild out-of-pocket shit. In between her smoke breaks. Titties.
There's Waffle House, and then Denny's is like a step up from Waffle House.
I like Waffle House too! Where else can you get a cheap-ass waffle and coffee and see a fight, probably?
Maybe that's why I don't like Waffle House too much. I'm like...
See, at Waffle House, I have the same, like, attachment to Denny's. I've been to a lot of Waffle Houses, because we don't have a Denny's where we live. So I've only ever been to Denny's a handful of times, traveling mostly. And again, at, like, midnight, 1 a.m., when it's your only option, it is what it is. Waffle House, same deal. I would, especially when I lived in Nashville, at, like, 1 a.m. or 2, coming back from Broadway, drunk off my ass, stopping at a Waffle House, getting a waffle, and also at, like, that time, you're either definitely going to see a fight or you're not going to see a single other person, and it was fine. But there were certain ones you went to. There was definitely one in Nashville that I lived the closest to. We didn't go to that Waffle House, because there were brooches everywhere on the table at that one. So we didn't go to that one. We went to the one an exit over, and it was pretty good. I also just love waffles. Waffles are my favorite breakfast food. Pancakes suck.
See, when I come home from the bar and it's like 2, 3 in the morning, I go to the gas station. I like pick up like food from there, like one of the sandwiches and like.
See, I will never go to a gas station at 2 a.m. anymore. Did that way too much, and it's a scary place.
I just have this mean look on my face, so that way people don't try and talk to me.
Oh, if they're on drugs, they'll still try to talk to you. That's the issue I have.
But yeah, I'll just go to the gas station, and then I get out of the car, and like I've got this mean look on my face. Then when I get up to the person at the register, I'm a lot nicer.
Yeah.
Bless their hearts, they're also there at 2 a.m. and neither of us want to be there, but that's true.
But yeah, what's pet stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, you should. If you're interested and you don't want to play Bramble, you should go watch us play Bramble, because the last episode came out this week. That this episode is coming out, so it's complete, it's finished, it's fun.
Or if you want to play Bramble, you can play Bramble and then watch us play Bramble.
Yeah, do it at the same time.
Use it as like a walkthrough.
Yeah, we were so smart. So
we didn't fail at all, not a single time.
Nope.
Just trust us.
Yeah, we're always serious.
So, once again, I was going to do epics, but once again, there is so much that I was trying to cover, and there was just no way I could get it done in time, because I'm basically trying to cram a semester's worth of an honors college course into one podcast episode. So, it's a little bit hard. It's a little difficult, I'm not gonna lie.
I can imagine.
So probably about like 2:30, 3 o'clock, I found another topic and whipped out 7 pages, and I don't know how.
Hey,
so we're going to be talking about Murphy's Law.
Okay.
So once again, Brittany did something folklore for random, and I did something like...
a college.
Yeah. So
I know, you have to have your knockoff whatever class with your real classes. And that's this podcast.
So Murphy's Law is an adage that is usually stated, quote, anything that can go wrong will go wrong, end quote. So people have long been commenting on the universe whenever something good or bad happens, and typically blaming a higher power or a greater entity for those things. So Murphy's Law has many, many precursors to the modern phrasing that we hear today. Because when something bad happens, you're like, oh, why is the universe being mean today? Yeah. Or just kind of hitting every red light on the way to work when you're already running late. You're just like, oh, why? And that's where this comes from. So mathematician Augustus de Morgan wrote on June 23rd, 1866, quote, the first experiment already illustrates a truth of the theory well confirmed by practice. Whatever can happen will happen if we make trials enough. So and basically what that was saying is like, okay, if we do these like scientific studies, or if we do these math studies, like, and run trials, like, if we do enough of them, anything that can happen will happen. But in later publications, it got shortened to, quote, whatever can happen will happen. Occasionally, it's termed Murphy's Law, which raises the possibility that if something went wrong, that Murphy is, De Morgan misremembered, which is hilarious if that's the case. That Murphy's Law came from this guy.
Because I was wondering when you said, yeah, okay. That's funny.
Yeah, that's so funny, because it's like, oh, anything that can go wrong will go wrong.
And then literally
they misremembered his name, which is something that went wrong.
Yeah, it's very funny.
But then you also have society member Stephen Granson found a version of the law that had not yet been generalized or was bearing the name Murphy's Law in a report by Alfred Holt at an 1877 meeting of an engineering society.
So was that earlier? What was the first date?
1866.
Oh.
Yes. So then there was a meeting of the Engineering Society in 1877, and Alfred Holt was the one writing the report, but society member Stephen Granson found the note that Alfred had made from the meeting in 1877. And it is, quote, "It is found that anything that can go wrong at sea generally does go wrong sooner or later, so it is not to be wondered that owners prefer the safe to the scientific. Sufficient stress can hardly be laid on the advantages of simplicity. The human factor cannot be safely neglected in planning machinery. If attention is to be obtained, the engine must be such that the engineer will be disposed to attend to it." So basically, once again, saying that, you know, things can go wrong, like, so you need to make sure that someone is always there to fix it if it goes wrong. Just, like, banking on the fact that if something's going to go wrong, it will go wrong, so we need to have someone watching over it to make sure they can fix it.
He was basically the first Boy Scout.
Yeah.
Always be prepared.
And then American Dialect Society member Bill Mullins found a slightly broader version of the saying in reference to stage magic.
Okay.
So the stage musician Neville Maskelyne wrote in 1908, quote, "It is an experience common to all men to find that on any special occasion, such as the production of a magical effect for the first time in public, everything that can go wrong will go wrong. Whether we must attribute this to the if something is malicious, malignity.
Oh, malignity. Never heard of that.
Wait,
I mean, maybe.
Because like they have all the different like prefixes that like depending on.
Yeah, go with it.
Sure. Of matter, or to the total depravity of inanimate things, whether the exciting cause is hurry, worry, or whatnot, the fact remains. So basically, you know, like, once again, everything that can go wrong will go wrong, but he was also like, just if it was just a bad thing that happened, or if you're trying to say that like inanimate objects are the cause of this, then...
What toaster harmed them? Very specific.
Yeah, or to the total depravity of inanimate things.
Yeah. He's going through it.
Apparently, in 1948, Paul Jennings coined the term resistentialism, which is a play on the word resistance and existentialism to describe, quote, "seemingly spiteful behavior manifested by inanimate objects." End quote.
What are these inanimate objects doing to people?
Where objects that cause problems are said to exhibit a high degree of malice towards humans.
I mean,
sort of like the hitting every red light on the way to work. Paul Jennings is saying that those traffic lights are being intentionally malicious.
They're one, sentient, and two, being a shithead.
And also, like, lost keys. Like, you know,
Yeah.
when you're running late, you're already, like, stressed, and then you can't find your keys. He's saying it's because the keys are being intentionally spiteful.
Have these men never heard of the Fae or ghosts? Like, maybe they're just ghosts are fucking with them. They're like, no, it's the actual thing. Look, that's a man for you, I suppose.
But, okay, and then next is in 1949, according to Robert A.J. Matthews, in a 1997 article in Scientific American, lay the origin of the name Murphy's Law. So all of these are like precursors, but this is the first one that it's actually saying this is what it's called. Like,
Okay.
this is the first time it's been named.
Imprint and all that.
So, whereas the concept itself had already long since been known. As quoted by Richard Rhodes, Matthew said, quote, "The familiar version of Murphy's Law is not quite 50 years old, but the essential idea behind it has been around for centuries." And then there's like a cut, and then we're going to the next quote that's also from the same thing. But these two sentences don't immediately follow one another.
Okay.
The modern version of Murphy's Law has its roots in U.S. Air Force studies performed in 1949 on the effects of rapid deceleration on pilots. End quote. Matthews goes on to explain how Captain Edward A. Murphy was the eponym, but only because his original thought was modified subsequently into the now established form.
Okay.
So this Captain Murphy said this quote, but his original quote has been modified to what we hear now, but it's still being called Murphy's Law. But this is the first time it's been labeled Murphy's Law. And then in 1952, as an epigraph to a mountaineering book, John Sack described the same principle as a, quote, ancient mountaineering adage, end quote. And then the ancient mountaineering adage is, quote, anything that can possibly go wrong does, end quote.
Okay. That can. Yes.
Differing recollections years later by various people make it impossible to pinpoint who first coined the saying Murphy's Law. The law's name, though, does apparently stem from the attempt to use new measurement devices developed by Edward A. Murphy. The phrase was coined in an adverse reaction to something Murphy said when his devices failed to perform.
Again, blaming the object.
Well, he didn't blame the objects.
Yeah, but it was like, that was why, type of thing. Because things failed to perform.
Yeah,
Still.
except it wasn't towards the things, it was towards, like, his intern. He basically blamed it all on his poor intern.
That also tracks for men.
So from 1948 to 1949, Stapp headed a research project MX-981 at Muroc Army Airfield, later renamed Edwards Air Force Base, for the purpose of testing the human tolerance for G-forces during rapid deceleration. The test used a rocket sled mounted on a railroad track with a series of hydraulic brakes at the end. Initial test used a humanoid crash test dummy strapped to a seat on the sled, but subsequent tests were performed by Stapp, who was at the time an Air Force captain. During the test, questions were raised about the accuracy of the instrumentation used to measure the G-forces Captain Stapp was experiencing. Edward Murphy proposed using electronic strain gauges attached to the restraining clamps of Stapp's harness to measure the force exerted on them by his rapid deceleration. Murphy was engaged in supporting similar research using high-speed centrifuges to generate G-forces. So they brought him in because he's already been working with like G-forces and stuff. But the sensors provided a 0 reading. However, it became apparent that they had been installed incorrectly, with some sensors wired backward.
That'll do.
It was then that Murphy made his saying, despite being offered the time to calibrate and test the sensor installation prior to the test, which he declined. They were like, hey, you want to test it to see if it works? He was like, nah, I'm good. So George Nichols, another engineer who's present, recalled in an interview that Murphy blamed the failure on his assistant after the failed test, saying, quote, if that guy has any way of making a mistake, he will, end quote. Nichols' account is that Murphy's Law came about through conversation among the other members of the team. It was condensed to, quote, if it can happen, it will happen, end quote, and named for Murphy in mockery of what Nichols perceived as arrogance on Murphy's part. Others, including Edward Murphy's surviving son, Robert Murphy, deny Nichols' account and claim that the phrase did originate with Edward Murphy, which of course he does. According to Robert Murphy's account, his father's statement was along the lines of, quote, if there's more than one way to do a job, and one of those ways will result in disaster, then he will do it that way, end quote.
All
right. So basically, even though that is who Murphy is, his two quotes, whether it's Nichols' quote that he actually said or whether it's his son's quote that is the one he actually said, either way, it got twisted into what it is now, but it's still named after Murphy.
Okay.
The phrase first received public attention during a press conference in which staff was asked how it was that nobody had been severely injured during the rocket sled test. Staff replied that it was because they always took Murphy's Law under consideration. He then summarized the law and said that in general, it meant that it was important to consider all the possibilities or possible things that could go wrong before doing a test and act ahead of time to counter them. So the way Stapp sees the phrase and the way Murphy allegedly used the phrase or saw the phrase are both very different. One is very negative and shines a bad light on people, which is Murphy's usage of it. You know, like if he's going to do this, he's going to do it wrong. Whereas Stapp is like it's more positive and like they look at all the things that can go wrong, they can take the proper steps to counter it.
Yeah.
So once again, another Boy Scout.
Yeah.
The association with the 1948 incident is by no means like secure. Like it's just kind of. This could be what it is, but don't take my word for it. Or don't take any of these articles' words for it, because despite extensive research, no trace of documentation of the saying as Murphy's Law has been found before 1951. The next citations are not found until 1955, when the May-June issue of Aviation Mechanics Bulletin included the line, quote, Murphy's Law, if an aircraft part can be installed incorrectly, someone will install it that way, end quote. And Lloyd Mallin's book, Men, Rockets, and Space Rats.
Oh. Great. My next read.
Referred to, quote, Colonel Stapp's favorite takeoff on sober scientific laws. M-dash? Yeah, that's an M-dash. So Colonel Stapp's favorite takeoff on sober scientific laws, M-dash, Murphy's Law, Stapp calls it, M-dash. Everything that can possibly go wrong will go wrong. Then, Fred R. Shapiro, the editor of the Yale Book of Quotations, has shown that in 1952, the adage was called Murphy's Law in a book by Anne Rowe, quoting an unnamed physicist. Quote, he described it as Murphy's Law or the fourth law of thermodynamics. Actually, there were only 3 last I heard, which states, another quote, if anything can go wrong, it will, end quote. That's an actual quote. Actually, there were only 3 last I heard. That's an actual quote in the book. That was not me.
I thought that was you, and I was like, okay, back up.
No.
Damn.
I was like, this person, cheeky. Anne Rowe was just a little sassy.
Love it. Call him out.
In May 1951, Anne Rowe gives a transcript of an interview with theoretical physicist number 3.
Actually, I prefer number 2. That's just me.
Quote, as for himself, he realized that this was the inexorable working of the second law of thermodynamics, which stated Murphy's Law, quote, if anything can go wrong, it will, end quote. I always liked Murphy's Law. I was told that by an architect.
A quote also.
Yeah.
Okay.
End quote.
Some wild quotes going on right now.
I was told that by an architect. And I can't tell what, like, if the architect
did they tell
told
Murphy's
the
Law?
told the theoretical physicist about Murphy's Law, or if the architect told them that they need to like Murphy's Law.
Yeah.
Because the way it's like, I always liked Murphy's Law. I was told that by an architect. It makes it almost seem like the architect is telling them to like Murphy's Law.
Or the architect is telling them that they've always liked it.
Yeah.
No, you've always liked Murphy's Law. I'm
Yeah.
gonna start telling people that.
So, yes, so the name Murphy's Law was not immediately secure. A story by Lee Corey in the February 1955 issue of Astounding Science Fiction referred to Riley's Law, which states that in any scientific or engineering endeavor, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And then Atomic Energy Commission Chairman Lewis Strauss was quoted in the Chicago Daily Tribune on February 12, 1955, saying, quote, "I hope it will be known as Strauss's Law. It could be stated like this: if anything bad can happen, it probably will." End quote.
Okay.
It just some dude was like, I wish it could be named after me, and this is how it should go.
But you know, I'm just throwing spitballing.
It's just like,
it's for fun.
Arthur Bloch, in the first volume of his Murphy's Law and Other Reasons Why Things Go Wrong, all caps, series, prints a letter that he received from George E. Nichols, a quality assurance manager with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Nichols recalled an event that occurred in 1949 at Edwards Air Force Base, Muir, California, that according to him is the origination of Murphy's Law and first publicly recounted by United States Air Force Colonel John Paul Stapp. An excerpt from the letter reads, "The law's namesake was Captain Ed Murphy, a development engineer from Wright Field Aircraft Lab. Frustration with the strap transducer that was malfunctioning due to an error in wiring the strain gauge bridges caused him to remark, quote, 'If there is any way to do it wrong, he will,' end quote, referring to the technician who had wired the bridges at the lab. I signed Murphy's Law to the statement and the associated variations." So that is another thing that backs the story we heard earlier. Yeah. And then, according to Richard Dawkins, Murphy's Law is nonsense, essentially. Because it requires inanimate objects to have desires of their own or else to react according to one's own desires. Yes. Dawkins points out that a certain class of events may occur all the time but are only noticed when they become a nuisance. He gives an example of an aircraft noise interfering with filming. Aircrafts are in the sky all the time but are only taken note of when they cause a problem. This is a form of confirmation bias. So that was his, basically, like,
it's a fair point.
This is just life, like, deal with it. Yeah. Similarly, I hate that word.
It is a rough one.
David Hand, professor of mathematics and senior research investigator at Imperial College London, points out that the law of truly large numbers should lead one to expect the kind of events predicted by Murphy's Law to occur occasionally. Selection bias will ensure that the ones that are remembered and the many times Murphy's Law was not true are forgotten. So selection bias is like, so let's say once every 3 weeks you hit every red light on the way to work. Well, every other time for the rest of that 3 weeks, it was fine.
Yeah.
But you're focusing
that's what you're
on the one time that it was rough, and then you're not focusing on the other good times. So you're going to select the times that it was bad more often, and that's kind of the
also
issue.
known as being a pessimist.
Yeah. So that's where the issue for him comes with Murphy's Law, is selection bias, like only like choosing to remember the bad. From its initial public announcement, Murphy's Law quickly spread to various technical cultures connected to aerospace engineering. Before long, variants have passed into the popular imagination, changing as they went, as things like this tend to do. Author Arthur Bloch has compiled a number of books full of the corollaries to Murphy's Law and variations of it, including Upram's Law, which is the name spelled backwards, so it's Murphy but backwards. So great. And that is, quote, anything that can go right will go right, end quote, which is the optimistic application of Murphy's Law in reverse.
Right.
Peter Drucker, a management consultant with a nod to Murphy, formulated Drucker's Law in dealing with the complexity of management. Quote, if one thing goes wrong, everything else will, and at the same time. End quote. Miss Murphy's Law is a corollary of Murphy's Law. It states that things will go wrong when Mr. Murphy is away, and it is quoted as, quote, anything that can go wrong will go wrong while Murphy is out of town, end quote. And then there's Muffrey's Law, is an adage that states, quote, if you write anything criticizing, editing, or proofreading, there will be a fault of some kind in what you have written, and the name is a deliberate misspelling of Murphy's Law.
Cute.
And that is the end.
Okay. So random.
Yep. Tis the point.
Yeah, I liked it. That's why random's fun, because you never would have gotten to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, that's really fun.
Yeah, there would have never been another time I could have talked about that.
I gotta finish this drink.
Oh, I haven't even finished mine. Oops.
Please don't chug it. You might throw up. No, that was fun. I always like random.
Me too. If I could just get the one thing I want to do so bad.
Third time's the charm.
I'm gonna have to start working on it tomorrow for 4 months.
Just do it in between.
Get random again.
Well, I guess it's that time.
You know we haven't had in a while?
A few of them, I feel like. We also just haven't recorded in a while, so everything feels kind of distant. But what were you thinking of? I mean, we haven't had literature in a while.
I was thinking of wine, because I was doing the drink.
Oh, drink, yeah.
And I got to red and white, because, we've got like, don't like, your choice, my choice, red wine, white wine. We have not had a wine in a hot minute, I feel like.
Yeah, I guess you're probably right, because I feel like if we've done choices, we might have picked wine.
Yeah.
That sounds right. But yeah, just straight up doing wine. Maybe we'll give it a sec.
Who knows?
Alright.
Let's spin.
Oh, wait.
Oh.
Sorry.
Ain't no way. We can't.
Are you sure? Because it can literally be anything.
That is true. We could. I just meant, can I do it in another week? I was trying to think if I could do it in another week. I probably could if by Sunday, instead of leaving it till 3 hours before recording, if by Saturday night I'm not done, I will wake up Sunday morning and pick a new topic.
Well, that's stressful. I don't want you to be stressed out about
No,
it.
it'll be okay.
Okay. So, what did we spend?
So we got random again, which normally when we get the same topic, again, 2 times in a row, we usually spin again. But for this, it's random, so it literally could be anything. So it's not gonna get
Yeah, it feels like it's okay to do it twice, because it won't be true crime twice in a row.
yes, or just the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, I probably won't do folklore next week. Even though I probably want to, but I won't, because I don't want it to be back to back.
And I might get to do the thing I've been trying to do.
Yeah.
The past couple times we've done random. And so, yes, and then our drink is red wine. So we did get wine.
Hey, you speak it, and it happens.
I don't know how I do that, because that's happened multiple times. I'm like...
Well, it's funny, because you were like, we haven't had wine, then we got wine, and we were like, random's fun, I like random, and then we got random again. So, clearly, sometimes the wheels listen to us.
Well, and then when I said the thing about, or last week, when I was like, oh, we haven't had don't like in a while, and then I spun, and that was literally what we got.
Yep. You also did that for literature, too, right?
Yeah.
So, it's always fun when that happens.
But you're so good at manifesting, I don't know.
So yeah, we'll be back with some red wine, yay, and talking about random shit again.
Yes, and I like red wine now, because I realize, I think I do like red wine, I've just always preferred white wine, so I was like, I don't like red wine.
That's kind of me with white wine. Yeah. It happens.
But yes, so if you'd like to find us together as a collective, you can find us at Sip and Spin Pod.
Find us in the Denny's parking lot.
Can't find me in the Denny's parking lot, that's for sure. You, maybe.
We don't even have a Denny's. But look for us there.
But you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and our YouTube channel. Or you can...
Don't think I've updated that in months.
Well, that's fine. I don't even think I'm logged in. Am I still logged in? I don't even know if I'm logged in on Twitter.
There's no talent.
No, I am.
Oh, there you go.
I'm like, I use my Twitter a lot, but I definitely don't use the podcast Twitter a whole bunch. Oops.
Feel free, you can.
But yes, it's there. You can still follow it.
Might not get anything out of it, but it's there.
It exists.
Yeah.
Or you can email us at sipandspinpod@gmail.com. If you'd like to find Brittany, you can find her at Whimsy Dream or Whimsy Dreams, depending on what was available. And if you'd like to find me, you can find me at Gleam YKS on everything. But as always, the 3 link trees will be down in the description below. And I do post on Twitter.
Yeah.
Just not on the podcast Twitter.
I don't.
You do sometimes.
Sometimes when I'm drunk.
But you post so little that it's like things you might want to see, and then it's your tweet because it was like the first time you tweeted in like 3 months. It's like, you don't want to miss this. And I'm like,
I know. When I, like, let me tell you guys.
It was like, I've watched Inside for the 20th time, and I'm like, oh yes, I could not go without my day without seeing that.
That's an important tweet. Yeah, when I do tweet, it's really life-changing stuff, guys. You probably want to follow me on Twitter.
Mine is mostly just retweeting pictures of raccoons, but that's okay.
That's fair.
I post more on my Stan Twitter, but I'm not tweeting. I'm not telling y'all what that is. Y'all don't get to know.
Yeah. Well, I follow like 5 accounts, so they could probably figure it out.
That is true. Because I think you follow me on every single one of my accounts. Like Stan Twitter, the one we got for here, and my private Twitter, I'm pretty sure.
I don't know about that one, actually.
Maybe not then.
Anyway.
Well, that was a longer outro than we normally do, but it's fine. We're just chit-chatting. I did say all 3 link trees would be in the description, right? That's part of my job description. That's what I get paid to do.
Yes. Clearly.
I'm not being paid at all, which is probably a good thing, because I would be fired by now.
But we thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you so much. We're glad to be back.
Yeah.
We've stuck with it 2 weeks in a row now.
Hey, it's a big deal for us around here. And we missed saying that last week's episode was the 69th. Nice episode.
Yes, because I had even meant to make a joke, and then as we were ending the episode, I was like, I forgot to make my joke.
Yeah, we were not with it. We were still getting refreshed again last week, so.
Getting the rust off.
Yeah. But yeah. So, next week, red wine and random. Sounds good? We'll sip with you then.
I was just waiting.
I made direct eye contact with her when I said that.
I was just like, come on, get it over with. All right, bye.